key, and inside of it there is a there is an expectation that goes with the key. It's unsaid. It's like a promise. There's a declaration here. And when you accept that key, you're declaring, I am safe. I am going to take care of you. I am going to do whatever it takes for your desires, for your dreams, for your wants to come true. And once you get that key and you cherish it and you protect it, like it is endless possibility for a couple, period. And there's a lot of talk. Like I'm talking to my daughter about this right now, is that learning how to guard your heart and still being transparent. And when a woman gives the key, the guarding of the heart shifts, the armor shifts. Now she's really allowed herself to take her place, that warrior companion, side by side. There isn't ever, especially if the woman's at home and she hasn't worked and she's a stay-at-home mom or a wife, and that never-ending task is always on, and there's dreams while you're folding laundry, and for a spouse to come home and say like, hey, did you dream about anything today, will unlock that in such a beautiful way. And it just, you guys take the time to connect like that.
Yeah, well, so everybody, if you don't know, this is Jenn Rees, and this is part 2, and we were actually having such a good conversation in the green room that I just decided to hit record and start going.
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands.
Welcome to Build an Iconic Life podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whitehead, and this podcast is dedicated to help you build a life with zero regrets by focusing on how you have everything you need to stand up, stand out, and live life on your terms. Let's dive right in.
What we were talking about is couples and relationships and intimacy and the levels of intimacy, and even how that goes into faith, if not faith, then religion. And we were going down such a rabbit hole that what I knew is that we would talk for an hour and then I'd be like, I gotta go. And you'd be like, I gotta go. And we just stop talking. But what we're really getting at is, I just started sharing with you, Jenn, that, Robin and I are at deeper and deeper levels of intimacy. And for me as a guy, and probably for a lot of guys, I did not know that there were deeper levels. Like I feel like I'm a pretty deep dude to begin with, right?
Sure.
Self-assessed deep guy. And it all began for me when we were standing outside of Robin's house one day, and we'd been dating for 5 or 6 years. And she said, I don't want to be in love. I want a best friend. And that pissed me off because I'm Mr. Romantic, and I, and like, I'm into this chick. And what do you mean you don't want to be in love? And I think what she was doing was taking a colloquialism and all of the traditions that are supposed to go along with that and saying, that's not enough.
Yep.
What I'm looking for is someone that is honest with me, someone that is willing to be vulnerable, somebody that's willing to stop beating his chest all the time and act like he got it all figured out. Somebody that's willing to tell me that, we're getting ready to run off a cliff, instead of always pushing me to the back because I'm some little woman who you think can't handle it, blah, 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 blah. And to be honest and fair to other men that might be listening to this, she was also putting things out there that were saying, don't tell me things I don't want to hear. You're supposed to be here to protect me. You're supposed to mow the lawn, take the trash out, do all the guy things. And so I'm taking a very linear approach. But then she said, I want a best friend. And then it was a couple months later, or maybe even a year later, I don't remember. And she said, you are my best friend. And Jenn, like, all the hair stood up on my body. I felt the straw break the camel's back. And I felt a surge of pride that I had never, ever felt other than for my child before.
Yeah.
And I realized that we're at the beginning of something. So now we've spent the last 8-9 years fighting like cats and dogs sometimes. By the way, everybody, I think when you're a real couple, you fight, but we also make up, and those makeup times come a lot quicker now, usually on the same day. And what has happened is there is she is, to me, she's like an orchid petal. I can bruise that thing real easy. I can put too much water on that thing and they all fall off. There's so many, it's a delicate, precise experience, and I have to be aware. And what started happening for me is I'd felt for her as a guy emotionally a certain way for forever. But what really started happening is I started seeing that I was willing to treat someone like you, a friend, with more respect and regard than I was willing to treat her. I was willing to treat a client that's going to pay me $500,000. Oh boy, I'm on time for them. I don't miss meetings, and I certainly don't raise my voice, and I certainly don't mistake things, and I certainly don't mansplain things. Like, I get it there, but I'm starting to treat her like she's an old pillow.
Yeah.
and so what we do now is we constantly, and it's work. It's a lot of fucking work.
Yeah.
We constantly are checking in with each other. We're constantly sharing what's going on in our lives, and we're constantly pushing envelopes through conversation. Some of them are painful and unwanted because of timing usually. And some of them are the most sexually or intellectually or emotionally arousing conversations or possibilities. And for me as an entrepreneur, I love new shiny opportunities.
Yep.
And here we are creating a new opportunity, even when we go do an old thing. And it's like, wow, we're renewing our relationship consistently and constantly. And for me, the only other relationship that I have like that is with God.
Yeah.
Personally.
Well, it's first of all, thank you for having me on again. I love our conversations. I love how deep you and I are willing to go, like, immediately. And just like piggybacking, I mean, my faith in God, when I'm faithful, my relationship with my spouse, with Gary, is on fire. It's whenever I have little stories or doubts, then I'm not even like on fire or on point with my faith with God, because I want to run my own show, which then directly affects my marriage. You know what I mean? And a lot of us
is hiding.
Yeah. And a lot of us just like miss the simplicity of like just owning that fact. And the fact that you guys are willing to continue, like, I call it internal violence. And I don't think my definition of internal violence probably isn't what everybody else.
Let's hear it.
Everybody. So my internal violence, am I willing to have enough integrity and be the leader that I say that I am, to go inward, to really ask myself constantly, what the hell are you up to, Jenn? What is this for? Am I looking at this person as an object or a human being? And am I willing to be so radically transparent in this moment, or am I going to lie?
It's hard not to self-protect, especially those scary moments, isn't it?
Well, and that's my biggest racket. I call it a racket, or the victim. Like, self-protection for me has literally saved my life when I was living on the streets, and when I was drug addicted and all of that stuff. And the people that I associated with, the only thing that you get to get good at is self-protection, because there is no such thing as loyalty when it comes to that. And so many things like switched. And once I really understood that the self-protection is actually self-harm. And there's a beautiful way to even uncover and not let that be like a dark power or a superpower. Any of that stuff is just when I simply own, oh, I'm scared right now.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go into self-protection, and then having your spouse come in the way that you and Robin, like, you guys give each other the space, even when y'all are fighting. I mean, I love when I hear that couples are fighting, I get flipping excited, because you know what that means? They're listening, they're expectant, they're listening for the tone. They still give a shit.
Yeah.
It's the ones that don't fight, that hold it in, and that could end up possibly getting divorced at 30 years, which blows my freaking mind. Or they decide that they're just going to stay together forever, and it really blows the definition of love. It really blows the definition of intimacy and stuff that was created for us humans, almost in such a beautiful, perfect way. But because we're human, we won't experience it if we're not willing to, if that makes sense. So
it not only makes sense, I mean, but it's led to, like, I think a lot of couples, at least my experience, they have agreements, but they don't really talk about them. Like, hey, we both believe in this faith, but do you talk about that? Do you talk about your lack of faith? Do you talk about certain parts of it that you don't agree with? Are you willing? Because no, we don't, because if I open up that door, I know she knows about all this, and now she's going to really start hammering me on all this. And so I can't talk about that. Robin and I have started talking. It's radical and it's scary. And sometimes it starts out as a great conversation, and 30 minutes into it, it's almost like, I fucking wish we'd never started this and we keep, and this is what's great about us. We both are type A. You didn't answer the question, and now I'm going to think about it until you answer it, like all night, going to wake up in the morning. And so what used to happen is we'd get into the fight, and I would try to pierce through it, and she'd give the whole growl thing, and that fur would go up, and I'd be like, fine, I'll leave it alone. And then I would wake my ass up the next morning. It'd be the second thing out of my mouth. And she would look at me like I have not even had a sip of coffee yet. And I'm like, look, I'm a morning person. We need to talk about this. No, the truth is I didn't know how to let it go.
Right.
And what we've learned to do now is sometimes start good, go through the fight, and then work our way back to why we were communicating to begin with. And that starts to build a foundation of trust that we're not going to abandon each other, that we're not going to run away, that we're not going to throw the towel in. And what is really wicked weird?
I love that.
What is so amazingly weird is when I started sharing with her some of my quirky beliefs that maybe aren't very mainstream, or maybe would get me strung up in a church somewhere or whatever. She goes, that's funny that you say that. I've kind of been thinking about that too, or I believe that too. And she'd give her version of it. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, we really can be best friends. Can't, I mean, like, you don't have to agree with everything with your best friend, but you need to be aligned.
Well,
and we're finding those things out about one another. It's a beautiful thing.
I love that. Gary, my husband, complained for, I don't know how many years, 16, 17 years, that, like, I'm not your best friend, and he was right. And that was one of the hardest conversations to have with him. Really the last 6 months, is he was absolutely right. He wasn't my best friend, for lots of reasons. All of them are bullshit. I wasn't willing to sit and have a conversation because of the stories that I created that he wasn't going to listen. And eventually, once that shifted, and once I opened it up and I said, okay, you are my best friend, there was a release for him too, that he was like, okay, finally. And it works both ways. Like, sometimes inside of the marriage, the man can move and create the safe place for the best friends to really take place. And like you said, it's the love of a best friend is almost like anyone else. They're always going to have your back. Like my other best friend, Brianne, like, she always has my freaking back. She is so gosh darn freaking upfront and honest and truthful. And it's not about being right or wrong. We're both willing to hear the other person, and we're both willing to be wrong. And I knew if I could actually have that with another human being, I could actually have that with Gary. And not that we have it now. We're working very diligently and very hard together. It's very vulnerable. And you almost want to say, like, you feel exposed, but it's not that. That's the self-protection story that I tell myself. Oh, I'm actually exposed, when I'm not. I'm actually not exposed at all. I'm actually so connected that I just feel free. That's what I think, that's what freedom really actually can look like and can be. And so being a best friend, it's something that we're still working really hard. We're building trust in a way that we never have. And, like, we know there's three different kinds of trust. I don't know if everybody else talks about it. There's blind trust, naive trust, and authentic trust. And there are times that I switch in from authentic into blind or naive because and the self-protection, and then we come back out. And so what we're willing to just now do just to build the trust is like, okay, I'm in naive trust. And so how do we get back into authentic trust? And you and Robin do that. You guys have this harmony that's so rad. And I get to see it on levels that a lot of people maybe on this podcast won't ever see. And I hope to God they do come to some of these events that Chris has and Iconic, and come see really how the harmony can look. I mean, if marriage can be fun and dorky and you have this super awesome sex, and you have a best friend that you're literally like skipping down, and then you guys are doing the internal work that the results show. It's the fruit. The results are showing. Even when you guys are fighting, you still see the love.
Shit, you saw the post after the last event. We were at one of our best friends. I was speaking at his event, and Robin and I got into it, and it was really weird. People were aware, because usually I'm at the event the entire time. And I didn't come down until about an hour before I was supposed to present. And, I did what I do. And on the way home or the following Monday or whatever, I wrote a post about it and what we went through. And I got a lot of people, including you, reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
But people were aware even then something was up.
Yeah.
But I learned a really valuable lesson. And for all the guys, I have some amazingly powerful women in my life, everyone. Like, amazingly powerful women in my life. Jenn's one of them.
Thank you.
And so what was happening is that Robin and I were going through some stuff. And this is just in the past. And Robin, she'd want to come talk to me about me. And it's like, it's her first iteration through the emotions of that thing, and so it comes at me like a fire hose, and I'm only going to take a fire hose to the face for so long before I respond to it, and it's usually not pleasant. So what started happening is when Robin would get in whatever mood she was in, it would be like, you need to go talk to somebody else about that, not me first. And Robin being Robin, and I think a lot of ladies are this way. In order for her to form her thoughts, she has to actually speak them.
Yep.
As she speaks them, she takes some of it back, and she's putting it together, and she just has to get it out. And it just wasn't proving very effective to be the person when it's about me, for her to get it out, because I'll pause her. What the hell do you mean by that? And that's not true. And wait. You just said the opposite of what I just said last time. It's like every fight that every couple has ever, probably. Because you never actually get to the fight. You actually just fighting about what you're saying wrong. But so I kept passing Robin off to someone else. Robin would, later that evening, things would just be magically better. But as I was talking to this person, and this person, by the way, happens to be Catherine Tague, Catherine started talking about this crazy word called creating a container. Chris, I'm just creating a container for Robin. And I'm like, I'm really glad that you're creating a container for Robin. And it took me, knucklehead, like 8 times of hearing this over about a year. Here I am sitting in a hotel room. I'm watching the clock right by her tick down to my time to communicate. And by the way, everybody, it's only public speaking, like the number one fear in the world. And I'm sitting here, they're paying members, they're people that have paid to come to this event, and I need to deliver. And I'm watching it happen. And I see the little cold sweat bead falling down my head, and we're going back and forth, and it's not getting anywhere. And eventually I just said, you know what? I need to be real quiet right now, and just in my mind, I'm going to create a container for Robin, and I'm going to open up my energy field, make it extremely pliable. And I'm just going to sit back and practice being still.
Mm-hmm.
And I let that pregnant silence happen for about 5 or 6 minutes, and she started talking. And I just kept telling myself, do not say a word. Do not, Chris, do not, man, do not.
Yep.
And I just held that container there, and she dumped it in for maybe 10 minutes. This is after 2.5, 3 hours of nothing getting done. And then she stopped talking after about 10 minutes, and I waited another 5. I just sat there for 5 minutes. And then I was like, anything else? And she's, no, probably not right now. So, well, I got to go. I got to go talk. I said, thank you so much. I'm really sorry for anything that I've done. You know, I love you. And I left. Did not resolve anything.
Sure. Well,
I go do my thing. Later that evening, we go out to dinner because it's the second night and all the VIPs and blah, 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 blah. And I come back to the hotel and Robin's in this cute little green dress and she's walking outside. I said, do you mind if I join you? Sure. Sure.
We're so funny.
And I walk outside and I sit down with her and the energy's changed and it got better. And it was my first time with her coming at me with my stuff that I just didn't attach to it. And I said, here's a container, just throw it all in here because that's all she really needed. So pro tip, dudes, when you get enough balls to actually like hold a container open for somebody, if I could do it for you or for all my clients, or I'm like, my God, I can't do it to the most important person in my life. No, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I was pissed, but I did it once. And I'm getting better and better at doing it. And the more that I'm doing that, the more trust I'm creating for her to share those other things that it's so cool. Like I was raised by kind of a single mom-ish. And mom made us watch Lifetime movies. I hated them. Like I'm a boy. This is my lifetime. Like I'm now experiencing the other side of a woman that normally they won't share with a significant other because it's not safe.
Right.
And that's where the real, all this other fun stuff happens. How did you come to this realization? Because you've done a lot. I mean, your personal story is one thing. Almost dying, protecting people is another thing. Thousands of people that you've talked to, and you're still working on this other part. You don't think that the world is struggling right now? Do you know? And this is a question for you. It's just prompting it. Do you know that many, many people inside our inner circles right now are all getting divorced?
Yes.
The new wave is happening again. And Robin looked at me the other day and she goes, Chris, it's kind of scary. And I said, yeah, it's kind of like mind baffling because these are people that I really love and respect. And she goes, how do you know it won't happen to us? It's because we're putting moats around moats around moats, Robin. That's why. And we're not going to stop because it will if we don't.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well,
where you are, what all this means?
I have a couple. First of all, I've wanted to throw in the towel multiple times in my marriage.
We have to.
And with great reason, and I mean, Gary could probably maybe even say the same thing about me. I mean, I was really rough around the edges when we first got married. I came in with so much baggage that I didn't even know that I was really carrying. There were so many things that a lot of like my parents' generation were not willing to have the intimate conversations that I really needed. Maybe not everyone needed. I really needed because there were so many thoughts, so much stuff going inside. I like the container. I needed it out. I needed to process, and I think once Gary and I realized we got the container thing down pat a couple of years ago, what we didn't do though is we held on to the container. We didn't just let it be. So then what we were doing was then all of a sudden, because we're both very stubborn and smart, is we'll just strap it on us. So what it started doing is then we started creating some unbeliefs about ourselves that weren't even ours. It was the other person's. Because just because if I go to Gary, hey, I'm feeling like this, there's no fact to it. It's a feeling.
Yeah.
Right. And so many people get that messed up. And with the divorce rate, for a little while, the divorce rate was down. The reason why it was down is because women don't want to get married now. And I think it was down like 42%. It might be 41%. And I thought that was like so crazy. I was like celebrating like the divorce rate was going down. And then when I continued to doing research, I realized like people are not getting married. Women are having kids out of wedlock, or they're with their significant other, but they're not married. And so like it doesn't matter what my views are about that. It doesn't matter any of this. What matters is that when you, like for me, when Gary and I first got married, we were young. There are a lot of life lessons that we still didn't really understand. And we didn't really have anybody that was willing to come in with us at the moment to walk alongside of us and just say like, listen, no, like because I heard like, I want to be careful how I say it, but not mute Jenn. My Jesus is my jam. And like, if he's not yours, right on. Like, I love all people. And I hope everybody really gets to know me about that. Like, I literally love people. Inside, when I had a mentor, I just always heard divorce is not an option. Divorce is not an option, which really created this story because no one was willing to actually go through of like, why could it not be an option? Or let's think of it this way. It is an option. And if divorce is an option for both parties, then could that kind of like scare you enough to like fall in line and connect and do the hard work? And for me, that's really kind of the shift. And that was really what shifted for Gary is we realized that divorce is an option. And we realized that the growth we were never growing side by side linear. It was always one was really high up and then the other would like catch up and that was okay. And through growth, through hard times and experiences, yes, you're going to change. My encouragement is that while you're going through the change is that you continue to dream about your spouse the way you did when you were dating. And you continue to dream that power couple that you saw when you were younger, they do exist. And it can come. And what it takes for that to continue, and Chris, I think you can really understand, it's such a radical transformation of any thought that initially pops into my head. I'm always like, okay, pause. Like we talk about this all the time, the power of the pause.
Practice the pause. Yep.
Practice the freaking pause. And I mean, if you guys don't understand this, Chris is like the man about it. Practice the pause. And I'll pause and I'll be like, whatever you're thinking right now led you to where we're at. And wherever I'm at, it doesn't mean it's good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is. So if you want something different, Jenn, you get to become something different. And I think that's where a lot of us really fall short is we get so far. And you talk about this in your book. A lot of us, especially as A-type personality people, we just go straight into let's go do it. That eventually we realize that we've become it. And so for me, the best shift was I wanted to become someone, then to go do it, then to have something. And that's really the big shift. Divorce sucks. I've been divorced. I'm on my second marriage. I have 2 kids from a previous divorce. Thank God we are all willing to really co-parent. I'm not saying that we never fought. I'm not saying that it was perfect. What we were willing to do was always put the kids first. And one of us out of the 4 of us, because my ex-husband got remarried and she's awesome and they have their own child together, is one of us was always willing to take a stand for the kids. And that dynamic that the 4 of us had, bringing it into my marriage with Gary, really taught me a lot. So when I even was like, F you, like I'm out, I would always remember when someone else was willing to take a stand for the kids. So I didn't go after John or I didn't go after this stuff. And so that's really been my experience and then, divorce happens, y'all.
Yeah.
intimacy goes, trust is broken, or the simple fact of some people like that the grass is greener on the other side. Could that be a possibility? Absolutely. And so, it's just I think you can understand this too. When there is a divorce happening, there's so many things being pulled, or there's so many things being cut, or you can start to realize the other person's faults. And my encouragement would be for anyone, if they are going through divorce, is to really take a look within. What if it wasn't just about faults? What if it wasn't about any of this stuff? What if it was just a very factual, okay, we're getting a divorce. No blame, no shame, no freaking guilt. And let's heal. And our friend Kathleen, let's heal so we can actually share from a place, from the scar and not the wound. And Kat talks about this all the time, and I would really love for that to occur. And I think if people started their relationships like that, and for so many of us that have voices that we can use, podcasts, public speaking, the live events that you have, that we go to, that we create, every single time we're on social media, that we say it very clearly and with boldness, so people can really hear that there's so many amazing different paths to have a beautiful, intimate marriage.
Of course.
And your marriage won't match mine, and I won't like the way you do it. And I think that's the big thing, is people fall out of love really quickly, and it could be legit and it might not, but divorce does something to you.
I'm a guy, so I definitely have a dude's perspective, and I definitely probably have talked to more dudes than dudettes, especially during traumatic things.
Sure.
With a significant other, I should put it that way. And my experience is guys are they're chicken. And when it comes to this department, and
I said we're gonna go there, huh?
Yeah. And I'm talking from a guy, and I've talked to mostly guys, and what I think all humans do, but at least me, when I'm talking to other guys and I'm mirroring. Am I like that? Do I think like that? Have I thought like that? Did I think like that? And was there a solution to that? Because I'm a coach. And so all that stuff's going on all the time. And what started happening, the more men that I talked to that were willing to at least get vulnerable with me. And by the way, they get vulnerable when they're pissed. They get vulnerable when there is no other option left. And they're finally like, all right, look, I got nothing. So I'm just going to dump all this on you. Tell me what to do. And I listen. And so over time, I started hearing these patterns. And one of the patterns is, she just can't be reasoned with. It's not logical. She doesn't even understand what I'm doing. She misinterprets. It's all she. And I'm sure from the girl's perspective, you hear it's him. Well, I'm going to talk, and then I want you to talk about it if you don't mind. What I finally did is say it's all my fault. Everything. Everything. If she's talking to me that way, that's my fault. If she's misunderstanding, that's my fault. And here's where it started really happening. When we were in slight conflict, I knew that she was in fight or flight mode. I finally got that in my head. She wasn't even hearing full sentences that I was saying. And then a minute later, she would repeat it. And I said, would you mind just repeating what I said? Because I'm like, why are we talking about this? And she would say, well, you said this. And I'd be like, well, I didn't say no, I didn't, because that's what I used to say.
Right.
What I say now is, man, I must have really miscommunicated that. Can you give me a chance to tell you what I meant by what I was saying? And I think guys, I know it's been tough for me. I bump my head, and about a week later I go, ow.
Sure.
Then I feel things. So I don't feel first. I have to practice the pause long enough so that I can realize that I just truncated 8 paragraphs into a sentence and a quarter. Made perfect sense to me.
Sure.
Why are you misinterpreting that? But in order for me to tell more of the story, I got to get vulnerable and maybe F up 4 more sentences that I really don't want to say. And so I think a lot of guys are going through that all the time. And what they do is they just start to walk back into that cave and sit back in the back and cross the arms and go, I don't care. It doesn't matter. What's been your experience on the other side of that?
Oh, goodness. So I might start crying, but right on. One thing I really related to what you were saying, of course, again, the power of the pause. And the other thing that really, like, for us, for my experience as a coach, let me just do this. And when I coached marriages and with the young women that I work with and the women that I work with, whenever somebody comes at me and it's he, in my head, they have a certain amount of minutes that they get. You know, because people, once it reaches a certain point, now you're only saying the same shit over and over and over again to prove that you're right so many times, because you know that you're wrong, because you are wrong. Why are you wrong? Because you get to take ownership and responsibility for every single relationship that you have. I might not have said anything to Gary that was horrible. It could have been the way that I walked or talked, or maybe it was nothing. And maybe really Gary is really having a shitty day. It's still my fault. Not because it's faulted, like I'm faulted or it's faulty. It's because if I really want a relationship, that deep connection, that hopes and dreams, I want my husband to dance with me in a freaking restaurant. Whenever I just ask him, hey, I'm feeling really needy, will you dance with me? I don't even want the answer to be yes. I want him so willing to stand up and just to start dancing. I want the Cinderella story and not the cartoon, the one that I designed with Gary. And that's what I want for other women and men. And so inside of that, like, are you willing to be brave enough? And this is where I think sometimes women have a little bit more bravery. And what I mean by that is, like, women are effing tough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the, dare I say, the girliest of girls, and I'm not even sure what that definition really means to me. They're tough ass freaking broads. You know, I mean, some of us give birth, some of us aren't able to. And inside of that, being willing and brave enough to deal with those things and those emotions, and to carry it not in a way that leaves you tormented or any of that stuff, but to hold your head up high. That's some freaking powerful thing. There are some things emotionally women are able to go through with dignity and grace that men just are not capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, like, yes, men are going to sit back. And when they do, it's the most beautiful time for us women to come in and to press in. Just as much as the woman wants to be chased and loved after, so does a man.
That's true.
They want to know that they're wanted. So when their arms are like, when they're like, F this, I just don't care anymore. First of all, you have to know that that's bullshit. And I'm not saying for everyone. You could be in a relationship where someone just really doesn't give a F. And if you're in that relationship, then like, what are you up to? You know, like, why are you willing to utilize yourself, or, like I call it prostitution, prostituting yourself to stay inside something that you think is comfortable, which is really killing you inside. So it takes a lot. But for me, when Gary gets like that, we have this thing called the pause and press in. So when one of us are very standoffish, and like, oh, I just don't care. The commitment and the promise that we made is we were going to press in gently. So if it's me being dorky, if it's me sending a little note, if it's me showing up wherever he's at with a little, like, one of his favorite drinks, stuff like that, like, breaks the ice for the shoulders to kind of drop and be like, oh, okay, I do really kind of care. And they, like, those conversations you're having them in your head, but you don't really, like, acknowledge it because you have so many. And so that's one thing that I've experienced. The more I'm willing to press in, leave my ego, willing to be wrong, take the ownership of this relationship, and own and be responsible inside of it, and lead myself into a place that is vulnerable for me, then he opens up every single freaking time. And it cannot always be the man. It just cannot. And so that's a big thing. Our femininity has so much power.
Mm-hmm.
We have so much power. And for so many of us, we're so afraid of that power because we think somebody needs to teach us about it, or we don't want to take it to some extreme. And if you have any religious or faith background, like what your parents or your grandparents, or maybe what the church, like, I mean, for me, like what the Bible says, that's like where I get to go through. That's between God and I, and and he definitely rebukes me lots. So it's just like, are you willing to, like, you being dorky on the couch? You know what I mean? Is the more intimate you get, the more intense the relationship becomes. And that intensity, I'm not saying it's bad. Like, maybe our perception of intensity can change. Maybe our perception of what we think the other person is actually thinking. What if our perception of the other person was so polar opposite that all of a sudden we fell in love again, just in that moment, in that day, and then we were skipping down the road in, like, the fairy tale Cinderella, hand in hand, because we just freaking created something that was so new and so freaking powerful that it connected us in a way that hadn't connected us before. And that's important. It's important for your marriage, and then it from there is a domino effect.
You said something really, really important, and I've had experience with it. And, there were many, many times when Robin and I were not getting along. We were both hanging on. God only knows why. But it was my interpretation of what she was saying, not what she was saying. It was her interpretation of what I was saying, not what I was saying. That was her story based upon her baggage, her trauma. My story based upon my baggage, my trauma. And when I started really becoming curious about what she meant, that was actually a level of vulnerability right there for me, like, to become curious, because I might have to hear it and find out it's exactly what I thought that it was, which really hurts. But when it really started happening, I started realizing that, you know what? Robin's not always this bubbly, happy person. A lot of times that's for the kids. That's for clients. That's for me.
Yeah.
What she really wants to do is go cry or be nurtured or blah, blah, blah. And, I've had other relationships. I had mentors in my past, and I just, like, I need more time with you. And he's sitting on the side of the road. This guy owned a $4 million painting company like 30 years ago or 20 years ago when I started, and he's mentoring me a little bit. I'm like, I need more time. He looked at me. He's like, I'm here right now. What more do you want?
Yeah.
And I realized that we're just hurt people. And instead of being appreciative of what I am getting, that becomes my new norm. And now I want to be sensationalized to another level. And for me, the tip was this: I have so many quirky, weird thoughts and dreams and kinks and desires and da-da-da-da-da. The new level is actually being free enough to say, hey, what do you think about this?
Yep.
But to get to the level where you can share that's been the really hard work for both of us, because we were like you and Gary. Like, I would run up and get way up ahead up here. She would catch up, and I don't want to talk about that anymore. I'm ready to go do the new thing. And then she'd go up here, and then I'd race, and I get here and I want to talk about it. And she just, like, look at me like, dude, that's been the last 6 months of my life. It's like, yeah, I'm glad you're caught up now. And so eventually what we started doing is doing a lot more checking in.
Yep.
A lot more checking in. And quite honestly, some of it hurt, because I would check in and very vulnerably, like, I'm making time. I put my phone on do not disturb every night. By the way, at 6:30, my phone goes on do not disturb, and I don't fucking see it until the next day. Like, it just is what it is. And that was a hard thing for me to get to. It took 2 years of me sort of kind of doing it. But in the process of putting that on do not disturb and making time for her, do you know I had to watch her stay on her phone, talk to people? Oh, I'm going to get butthurt about that. Why? Just be the leader, man.
Yeah.
Be what you want to see, plant the seeds of what you want to grow, and quit turning around every time and just clear cutting everything that's halfway ready to harvest and saying, I got nothing to eat. Well, no shit, man. Quit planting those seeds. Keep doing. And as I learned that became this example that you're talking about of it's up to me. If it is to, that's what I heard you saying. If it is to be, it's up to me. Yep. And so something happened, Jenn, that I started filling my cup up personally so much that I actually have stuff that mostly overflows now. And I spend more time filling my cup up so that I have the overflowing to do this with you on this podcast, to do this with clients, to do this with Robin, to do this with children, to do this with friends. And when I figured that part out, man, I realized the rest of my life is going to be a life of service. It's not going to be a life of let me go accumulate as much stuff as I can accumulate. And when I made peace with being in service, whether I'm gone today or whether it's 50 years from now, like I'm already joyful. Not always happy, but I am joyful. And my life is my definition. I don't care what yours is for me, but my definition is I'm doing the work. And that fulfills purpose in me. And that purpose carries me through when I don't get what I want. Pretty cool thing.
It's beautiful. For years, and I'm, we can always continue to grow and level up. So let me just be very clear about that.
That's for sure.
One of the coolest things that I've learned is like what you were saying, like to love yourself. For so many years, I either picked up a belief that it was selfish, I heard something wrong, or I was pissed that someone was willing to put themselves first. And so I made up a story about something, but learning to really love yourself it's such a beautiful love story. Like for me, it's a love story between God and I. Yeah. And the pursuit is never over. He's either chasing me or I'm either chasing him. And to know that that's what my marriage can be like. That's not what my relationship with my clients can be like. My relationship with my core group of friends can even get deeper, or some random stranger that when I connect with them, and it's one of the things I love to do, like, God, show me some stranger that I get to talk to today and whatever it is that you want me to say. And then remind me to have the courage to go do it, but it's within that. And, something that when I used to coach marriages and even prior to it, but especially when I was coaching marriages, a couple of key phrases that we would say, and I hear you and Robin do this often. Gary and I do this. My children and I actually do it. I hate it when they do it on me, but that was me willing to transform. I heard you say this, and I'm making up this about what you said. Because now what's occurring is you're actually repeating what you heard them say. Most of the time when Gary wants to come at me either sideways or loving, I actually hear the words that he's saying, even in a fight. Us women can hear and hold and remember things that y'all will never remember because you're not supposed to. That's not how your brain is wired. Ours are, and especially even knowing that difference. So when I hear Gary, or when he doesn't follow through, or when I don't follow through and I'm not loving and gentle and kind, and I'm not willing to press in or whatever it is, we say, hey, I heard you say this. These were the words I heard you say. This is what I'm making up about the words you're saying. And this is now where I'm at. So press in a little bit. And then, sometimes you're going to get the reaction that you don't want. Sometimes you're going to get that fight. And I always am freaking right on. And so I that's the important piece here too is, and I'm so stoked that you even brought it up, is am I willing to love myself in such an amazing way that is so selfless that once I do that, then the joy, then the time, people want to complain about time, or I need to balance my life, or I have too many things to do. None of that stuff fucking matters. None of it matters. Because when I'm fully, when I love myself and I'm willing to be with myself wherever I'm at in that moment, immediately, if I see someone in front of me, it's gone. All I want to do is connect with that person's heart. I have an aim every single morning. And most of the time, my aim is the same thing every single day. And that's people's hearts. Like I am a person that wants to connect like immediately. And if people have the little fluff stuff up front that they need to like kind of get used to, like right on, I'll give you a couple minutes from that. You get a couple minutes, maybe. It's one of the best compliments and probably the thing that most people complain about. I'm too intense, too intense right away, and I go too deep right away. Well, and I look at them and I'm like, right on. If that's not something that you like, then like, cool, no problem. Let me give you a couple phone numbers of some women that are willing to do it, because I'm not. And that goes the same like within my marriage. And like my husband had to allow himself to like be willing to do that. And I need to give him space and time to learn, and that all came from service work. Like people may not like this. Like inside of my marriage, I serve my husband and my children. My husband does too. And so do my children. And that heart of a servant leader, like my friend a long time ago, Angela used to call it, like she's a servant leader, a leader that serves. When you are so focused on human beings, like the amount of money that Gary and I bring in, like right on, like, yay, we can go on a trip. And also like, I wonder how many kids we can feed this year. Like I can share a target with you guys that we have some targets we share, some targets we don't. Right. We have a target that we want to feed 1 million kids in 2 years. So are we working our butts off to that like God's provided for us to make money, to bring it in? Yes. Are we spending it on stupid shit anymore? Like, no. Could we? Sure. Do I give a crap? No. Does Gary men sometimes like the fancier cars and all that stuff? Like, do I need to get mad? No, none of that stuff. The most important thing here is it really is love, like loving self, loving each other, serving the other person, because when you're willing to serve, it has totally radically changed my life, Chris. I went from causing harm to being to just be with another human being and wanting them to succeed. And another thing, I have a friend every morning that sends me a text, "What's your sword today?" Mm-hmm. Like I put this armor on and I like do it with the song, and I get all badass, and it's this heavy metal song. It's called The Prodigal Son. And I'm like armoring up and getting my swords and my weapons and all this stuff. And I'm dancing to it. And then I invite God back in. Oh yeah. Thanks for my moment of like fun. Like, what is my sword today? And every single time I'm waiting for this long ass, badass sword, and he'll be like, he'll show me like a little heart. I'm like, oh, my swords are heart today. Thank you so much. And like, I used to get so bitter, or I would see like a little tear. And now I know that's like intimacy. So, okay. So my sword is intimacy today. And what that really has done, it has really equipped me and allowed me to be the masculine and the feminine side. And when it comes inside of this marriage, to know and to harmonize both and not overdo one side or overdo the other side. Because if I'm overdoing one side or not, I mean, there's harmony and chaos and all that stuff. But most of the time it's me and self-protection. I'm choosing one side or the other. And just like come together. So the power of pause. This is what I heard you say. This is what I'm making up about you, you rat bastard. And this is how insecure I am. I've started really saying that to Gary. Like right now, I'm very needy. In all sense of the word, however you want to, like I'm very, very needy.
You're going through some stuff right now.
Yeah.
Like physically, emotionally, spiritually. You're going like you in classic Jenn style. You're like, I'll take a dose of all of that right now. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's just turn it up a notch. Especially with recovering from surgery, there is no physical touch right now. And for my husband, physical touch is it's his love language and affirmation. And there's only so many affirmations you can give someone without being, we can hold hands and like do that stuff, but there's no hugging right now, even my own kids. So what that has really done, it has thrown us into this beautiful matrix of like hey, I don't feel connected. Like, what the hell's going on here? You know, and when sex is really big for men, that's how they really feel intimate. For women, it yes and but no, it's the deep conversations. But when you don't have one or the other, it really kind of messes, it really does mess with our heads. And so now we're learning again inside of the Change with My Faith, inside of my business right now. We have inside of like, and I've also added a couple of things to my plate. Are you shocked? Um, and then just being willing just to be like, okay, we had this level of intimacy that now we don't have. And whether it's because of the lack of sex or not because of the lack of sex, like Jenn is not the problem, Gary is not the problem, intimacy is the problem. So now I'm not focusing on him. What I'm doing is being with myself and focusing on the problem. If I'm bringing myself, I'm in ownership and responsibility and leading. And so we're entering a new phase, and I'm not super stoked in a way. The uncomfortability is, you know, and then I could like yesterday I started making up stories, and then I just really realized like, oh, you're scared. Oh, it's like freaking right on. Like, okay, what are you scared about? Oh, well, what if he wants to go have sex with somebody else, or he's talking to some other woman? Okay, well, why don't you just ask him? You know, and we can have this with so many other people. So I just appreciate the fact that you and I, like, this is a deep, intimate conversation, and that men and women can have it, that
Yes.
women and women can have it, men to men can have it. But most importantly, like, I know that Gary wants it from me first. He doesn't want to fucking call his buddy and
Right.
be Jenn's being a bitch, or she's being amazing, or like, I want to like do all this. Like, Gary actually wants to come to me first. And am I willing to be brave enough to allow him to do that? A lot of the times, Chris, I wasn't. I was so angry and I was so mad and so bitter, you know, and so I'm now that I'm not, I'm learning how to come in and be like, okay, like, give me your best shot. I'm now the container for him in a way that he needs to. And it's a way that he knows that, like, it's that I don't have to carry, but he needs it off his shoulders. He's not asking for me to carry it. He's asking for me to listen. And he's asking me to listen in a way that we call generous listening. Are you really hearing what is not being said? Am I paying attention to my husband's body language? Am I seeing that when he talks about this business, are his eyes looking at me? Are they looking on the ground? Is his head turned? Is there shame? Is there confusion? Am I willing to go to the next step? So when he is done, that whatever I can say, if I'm supposed to say something, that now it actually drops and it plants a seed. It doesn't create destruction. I'm now planting a seed for him. And then eventually your spouse will do that back. You know, and you and Robin are really, really great. Gary and I watch you guys all the time. I mean, you and I have talked about this. You guys have actually really been great for Gary and I in lots of ways. We managed to really create a lot of destruction for each other in the last 20 years. And to see you guys laughing and joyful and doing what you guys are doing inside of the world. And yes, it's about business, but it's personal. Like, for you and Robin, business is very personal. It's the same for me. And Gary and I really, really do look up to you guys. And we do watch you guys a lot. And it's because of you. Gary's even willing to like get on phone calls. Like, Gary does not like the coaching world. You know, like, there's a lot of things. And am I willing to not hold that against him and stuff? And so you and Robin have really, really brought a lot of awakening for us, and some fun, dorky dances in the middle of, and the conversations I have with Robin about just me being a woman and dressing and outfits and wearing my whatever I want to wear. I mean, what's prudent for me, not for everybody else. And, you know, it's a radical thing that has taken place just with the last 6 months of knowing you all. And then we get to have these awesome conversations, you know, two people that are married to two different people that have the same goal eventually. It's very intimate. You and I are very radically transparent. And come in here and just say, listen, if you guys are struggling, like, right on.
Yeah, exactly. You're not alone.
Nope.
And by the way, I don't expect that for the remainder of our relationship that we will not struggle. In fact, the moment it's almost like the whole reason they created Knock on Wood. I go, dude, everything has been going great. And the next thing is somebody farts and everything goes to shit. And I'm like, well, here it is. But you know what? The damaging part of those conversations, which I like to call ping pong.
Yep.
It's just, and like, if you can just step back in the drama and just watch it, it's like, I'm going to say this and she's going to say that. Then I'm going to say this. And it's like, we've already had this conversation about a different subject like 85 times. I already know how this is going to end. Now, then I'm going to go drive to the office. I'm going to sleep there for 3 days. Then we're going to make up. Then we're going to have great sex. Then we're going to, and it starts a whole nother week of everything being fine until I do that whole pattern all over. What if we just stopped? Yep. What if I became an experimenter, a scientist, and started saying, how about this time? And what I've found, I'm coming back with good news. What I have found is indeed some things work, not all things. But what is required that I've heard you say, and I found it to be true for me, the only way that anything worked is I had to learn how to love me enough so I actually understood how loving someone else could be.
Yeah.
That's really all it is like I'm giving out of my abundance. I'm not giving out of my lack. And that's where Catherine speaks about, talk from your scar, not your wound. Yep. And what my experience has been, I feel like I'm a dude. Like I'm a guy's guy.
You are.
I like to put me around other women, just like I might have a certain political leaning. Well, guess who I talk to? People that don't think anything like me. Guess what? I might be a Christian. Guess who I talk to? Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, atheists. You want to know why? I'm searching for the truth, y'all, and I don't think I know it. Yep. So I hang out with women because y'all are the most mysterious things I've ever experienced. Like, it's like if I had 1,000 opportunities to think a certain way, what just came out of your mouth would not have been any of them that actually came out of mine. Isn't that intriguing? Because I like to think a lot. And so the more I've hung out with women, the more I've been able to integrate this side into me, which allows me to look at body language, which allows me to check myself, which allows me to realize that I am literally 2.07 times Robin.
Yeah.
What do you think happens when I raise my voice? Because she raises her voice at me and I don't feel physically challenged by her on any level. I just go, you need to shut up. You're talking to me like you're my mom. And mom made me, I was a little, so I feel the same feelings, but the truth is, unless she has a gun or a knife, I'm pretty not worried. Well, I raise my voice a half of an octave, I get a very different Robin. I have to learn to own that.
Yeah.
I have to learn to go, dude, name the last client you talked to that way. That doesn't pay you to talk to them that way.
Yeah.
And it's like, no one on earth would tolerate that. Then why are you being a dickhead and talking to your best friend that way? I'll tell you why. Because you're afraid of something that has zero to do with her. And the more I realized that, the more I was like, you know what? And you and I are both getting here. Like, I've been here longer than I'm probably going to remain.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah.
How do I want it to go? How do I want it to go?
Yep.
Chris, not Chris with some religious thing that was put on me when I was a baby, not Chris that had a mom that's been married numerous times, or a dad that did what he did, or brothers and sister and and friends and Chris. What does Chris want? Who am I? And so this is what I speak about from stage a lot. And people look at me and they go, and I go, who are you? Why are you here? Why did you pay money to sit in front of me? And people go, I don't know, bro.
That's it.
I can't help you. Because until I knew who I was and claimed it, And then I knew what I wanted. Man, I was a wandering Ronin. That's all I was.
Yeah.
No, masterless warrior.
You're so amazing at that. I mean, I've been in this coaching world for a long time, and I've coached for other people. And when I first heard you ask, like, why you're here, there, when I used to coach for this old company, and we would get pretty like in your face to these women. And there's a time and a place that even women need in their face. I believe it with every part of me. And like, I may not be for you, right on. I'm not for everyone, you know, and you know, we would yell, what do you want? Why are you here? Who are you? And we would freeze. And I mean, there are times that I still am frozen, you know, and I think I shared this with you a couple weeks ago. About a month ago, I had someone say, Jenn, what the hell do you want? And I'm getting ready to to tell them what I want. And all of a sudden I looked at her and I'm like, I'm going to give you a bunch of fucking bullshit right now. I'm just going to shut my mouth, because honestly, I think right here, I have no idea what the definition of the word want is. So I'm going to shut my freaking pie hole for a minute. I'm going to go back to freaking second grade. I'm going to look up the definition of want and need. I'm not going to answer my phone for 24 hours. I told my clients, my kids, if it's 911, call twice. I mean, they're old enough that if it is something like that, then you know, it's pretty bad or it's not so bad. You know what I mean? And I sat that day on my face pretty much the whole day and said, okay, I don't know crap. Like, I think I know it, and I obviously don't. So like, God be with me as I really am willing to till my soil right now. Just like, get effing dirty, y'all. And like, and if you think that you know what the definition of want is, I just encourage you to go. Because what I found out about it and what I was making up about it were two totally different things.
Oof.
And when I finally was willing to be wise enough to not effing know everything, then all of a sudden, like, the pieces of me that I had hidden from a lot of people, like the dark side of me, but the dark side isn't good or bad. You know, like, there's a piece of me that y'all really don't ever want to see. Like,
no, I believe that.
Right on.
I believe that.
You know, and also like that piece that y'all don't want to see, there's something beautiful about that person. And for so many years, I have stuffed her and just told her to shut up. Like, you're going to make people insecure. You're going to make your husband feel this. You're going to embarrass your children. Like, and it is because people have said something or people respond in a certain way. Maybe if it's not, you know, body language and stuff. And so once I really got that, and I was listening to you again, and I was reading your book again about a month ago when I really started doing this. And that's what really came clear for me is I effing know my purpose. Like, I know my purpose. And because I know my purpose, I am willing to own what I want and need now. And I am no longer willing to pretend that I know who I am fully, because I don't. I mean, a human being, the design, how a human being is created is so complex and so intense that, so and just what I really started grasping is, first of all, I love violence.
Yes, you do.
Like I freaking love it. I like what it produces. I like the authenticity inside of violence, and it's very effing factual. You know what I mean? Can violence be good or bad? Yeah, absolutely. What I am really is the peace part of the warrior. That this part that's harmonizing has become someone that I am so curious about. You use the word curious. You know, curiosity did not kill the cat. The human killed the cat.
Amen.
You know, so, and that's just, you know, that's what you have left me. And the people, our core group, that is what they offered me. They offered me this place that really let fucking Jenn come out when she was stuffing it so intently that once I finally was like, fuck it, I'm going to let out, everyone already like was celebrating. And then from that, this last month, there's been some radical shifts and radical changes. And there's this piece about me that is now occurring, that now affects my husband. It will affect your relationship with mine, the people that are around me. But it will continue to like grow and change. And, and if I'm willing to grow and change and not be fucking right all the time, Chris, then you know what? It's a pretty damn day. And if I'm willing to allow the death of that night, and when I wake up in the fucking morning, no, like that's where I left off the day before. That's my foundation. But yesterday, nothing about yesterday fucking matters. We want it to matter. We want it to count. And when I'm willing to be like, yesterday doesn't matter because I only have right here. When I'm willing to let me count in this moment, that's when intimacy, connection, bravery, curiosity, that's what really I find attractive. And so does my husband. And so conversations may not have to happen. All of a sudden they just see that twinkle in our eyes that we always talk about. It's there. And, let's not just hope, let's actually do the work for it to stay.
What if what you want is a direction and not a destination? And I think that's where people mess up. And the last thing I'll say is, so many people talk about legacy being what you leave for people. My legacy is going to be what I leave in them.
Yep. Amen.
And as that became my legacy, the struggle stopped because I'm playing by my rules.
Yeah.
I can win with my rules. And when I became confident enough that I could win with my rules, I just started playing the game. And guess what? I win. And that winning is a feedback loop.
Yep.
So before, when that winning was violence, the reason that you like it so much is because you weren't getting your ass kicked. You were doing the ass kicking most of the time. If, on the other hand, you were getting your face beat up all the time, you would have taken it for a shorter amount of time until eventually, either monetarily or physically, you could not afford that anymore.
Right.
One way or the other. Evel Knievel. That's all.
Yep.
Eventually, all the bones break and you're like, can you ride the motorcycle? No. Well, you can't. But you were good at it. But that was a part of who you were.
Just a small piece.
What I knew about that when I met you was, if she is that good at something that women typically are not that, because you're not good at it with just women. You're like just good at it. That's why I don't want to know that part. But if you're that good at something that base, which is important, but it's base. It's a fight or flight response. It's a reptilian brain response. Ooh, what happens when you put that level of discipline and intensity into what she really wants? And I think seeing you push through when you didn't have to, by the world standards, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But you weren't willing to give up on that. And those are the people I want to hang out with, because I learn it. All that feedback comes back to me. That's why I love hanging out with elite level people.
Yep.
Elite level people change. Like, who they are the next time we do an event is different. You've literally been a different person every event that I've seen you.
I know.
And that's exactly what's happening to me as well.
It is.
And it's what I'm watching happen to our friends. And it's like, that to me, the entrepreneur side of me starts making this thing click, and then lights come on, and then the conversation begins, and here we are doing this. Yeah. If people, I know you have some things coming up soon too. We're going to be supporting you, most likely coming to What's Allowed, except the girls' events. If people want to reach out to you, what's a good way for them to find you?
So on my website, it's HeyCoachJenn, JENN.com. Go on the website, click the little button, and it comes directly to my phone. I'll get a text.
Do you have anything coming up in the near future that you want to tell anybody about?
Yes. Thank you. The tears are coming because I'm finally Jenn. It's a women's event from the ages of 35 to 50, business women. And this event is not fucking for everyone. It's not. It is exactly who I am, who I know a lot of women want to be, but quite possibly afraid. And it's really allowing the warrior to come out, and not the definition of society, or not just the definition of like movies, like what a warrior, the definition of who a warrior really is, and who she can be. And it is on a ranch. Food is included. We have a chef coming. We don't have to leave. What we do and what you will be able to experience is we are going to train and transform the women for them to learn how to guard and grow their business and their personal life. And inside of that, it's their fight. We take a stand with you, and we create and we forge this like destiny for them. And so there is a lot of interesting things at this retreat that will be taking place. I have a couple dear friends that are coming, and I'll announce a couple of them. Thomas is coming. He's going to be speaking at the event. You and I have a call next week to talk about this anyhow. And I'm very excited that Thomas is coming in. Thomas brings a piece of me that used to be like very confusing. And I think it's very important for men to still be at a women's event. Women need to hear from men. It doesn't matter if they're married to a man or not. Men are very important. And Thomas has that piece that really hit me. And I'm very excited for him to be a part of this. My other dear friend, frickin' Adam Smith. Oh, my
only other human on earth that likes violence as much as you.
I swear he's like the pea to my pod, I think, or whatever you want to call that. So Adam and I are developing, it's going to be this phenomenal experience. I don't want to drop too much, but I just will say that the women will be able to use their hands. They'll be able to really learn situational awareness, how to really become tactical and practical. And I don't mean in just a physical way, but it does take a woman to get physical for her to let her guard down, to learn how to be tactical and practical, and to really pick what really situational awareness really means. It doesn't just mean walking to your car at a mall, which it does. Situational awareness is like, is my spouse really connected to me? Am I connected to my children? Does my best friend know that I freaking love her, even though I haven't talked to her for 3 days? Does my next door neighbor need anything? Did the couple that live down the street, who's 80 years old, his wife just died. Do I know that he needs us for dinner? Am I willing to see over here I have a hole? Can I delegate and call someone to do this? Because life is happening so often, and so many of us get really myopic. And so this is a very physical experience, but you're going to get your business. You're going to get some very deep dive into your business, but also very personal, because like I said earlier, I believe business is very personal. And if there's any piece of you that is not awake, it will be awake after this event.
Well, where do they go to find that right now?
That's on my website also.
Which is?
It is at www.HeyCoachJenn.com. My Instagram handle is the same thing, at HeyCoachJenn. You can find me right there. And I gave you guys my phone number. Please reach out. If I don't respond, there's a reason why I'm not responding. It's not because I'm being a bitch and don't have the willingness. Most of the time it's because I'm with my kids and my husband.
Good. Really appreciate you taking time.
I thank you, Chris, for having me back. I love this. I always think we're going to talk about something else, and then we come in here and it like nails the heart, and we talk about this stuff, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity that you've given me on here, and the opportunity that you give so many others, and keep leading from the front, brother.
Yes, ma'am. You too. And don't worry, we're going to be doing a lot more of this. We'll find
I know. I'm excited.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Hey, friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to catch future casts. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it so others can benefit from it as well. I'll see you in the trenches.
catch me howling at the moon.